players. Today, it was time for the coach and the general manager. And Remo, it was very interesting. I mean, I just saw the what Kevin Cheveldayoff had in the past hour. I will say the tone of the Maurice availability was, well, in a lot of ways, vintage Maurice. He had a number of laughs going on in that. He had a number of laughs going on at times in it, and it seemed like the tone, the feeling maybe amongst management had cooled a little bit since a really disappointing end to the season in that Game 4 against Montreal.
Yes, sorry, we did get on a bit late. Let me slide in. They missed the first intro, but we're here, we're live. I didn't hit go live. There's like 3 different go live buttons I have to hit, and I think I didn't hit the third one. So what's going on, everyone?
We are officially live, though, right? Like we're good to go. Everybody's here. We're seeing Cynthia and Buzz Split, Paula Det's here. Yeah. They said that there was a super mute. Yeah.
They didn't miss anything. You guys just missed the intro to the show. It's fine. Everything's good. We missed the press conference, so it was what we were waiting for. I don't think we learned too much. I mean, we're gonna get to all the clips down the list. I think it was a bit of a Maurice one felt like more of an interrogation, a little, and the Chevy one was kind of like big picture. What are you gonna do to improve? I think we can take a look, and on the whole, the Jets had a successful season. I think we can get that. They made the playoffs. We thought they were going to. They advanced. They beat the Oilers. They got to the second round and lost. I mean, a lot of good teams lost in the second round as well. I think the Jets are behind some of those teams like Colorado, who lost yesterday. But I think the fashion that it happened and reminders of previous playoff failures, the games against Montreal maybe left you feeling like left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And I think you look at the defense and you can see that there's areas for improvement, and that was talked about as well.
Yeah, no, it certainly was today. And I'm the same way. I mean, I think with every day that goes past, you sort of get over it a little bit more. But even right now, I mean, on Friday heading into the weekend, and I know that ended up on Monday, I think a lot of people are still sort of just trying to figure out what the heck happened in that series. But you are right, and I said this earlier this week on the show, if you had told me, without knowing what had happened, that this Winnipeg Jets team made the playoffs, beat the Oilers in the first round, never mind sweeping them, and bowed out in the second round, I think most Jet fans would have said, yeah, you know what, that is a pretty successful season considering what the expectations were going in. It's just that those expectations change quickly when you're battling for first place midway through the season. And, when you play the way they did and got the result that they did in the first round, obviously, it just made what happened in round 2 that much more disappointing. But you are right. The more we get removed from the Montreal series and, how ugly that was from a Jets perspective, there is a number of positives to take out of everything that we've seen. But to be honest, I mean, the questions about, the team going forward have so much to do with the youth. When are they going to be able to get into the lineup? There were some interesting things with Kevin Cheveldayoff, who, basically said flat out that, the sliding ELC played absolutely no role in Ville Heinola playing. So,
yeah, I mean, he has to, I'm going to stop in. He has to say that. He can't come out and say, you know what?
Yeah,
he's NHL ready, but you know what? We want to keep him for your control because you get in trouble with the union. There was a Mariners executive who did that in the offseason at a luncheon. Sorry to interrupt you. He got fired. With one of their top prospects where they were manipulating his service time. So he has to give that answer.
Yeah, no GM will say that. And again, sometimes the guys have to say things. Sometimes it's 100% true. I mean, we don't know. My opinion was, and I said this a number of times, that it seemed like there was an organizational decision that, if we're this close and in this situation, let's not, just on the last game of the season, blow the contract. But that was contradicted today by the general manager. So we'll hear about that coming up. Listen, before we get to the first part of the program, which will be some of the highlights of Paul Maurice today, I want to tell you about Policy Me, an online life insurance that allows Canadians to buy term life insurance in minutes, 100% online and at the most affordable price. Listen, life insurance is a pain in the ass. It's maybe the least sexiest purchase that you'll ever make, but it's something that you and your family need. If you do have people that depend on you, what would happen if you weren't there to pay the bills, pay the mortgage? These are things that, you unfortunately have to have taken care of. Well, why not do it in the simplest, easiest way at the best rate? Policy Me simplified all the unnecessary bells and whistles in the traditional life insurance process, resulting in a fully underwritten term that's fast, easy, affordable, and 100% online. On average, Policy Me rates roughly 10 to 20% lower than other insurers in Canada. And you'll find out if you're approved for coverage instantly instead of waiting weeks like most other companies. And most people don't require a medical exam. And it couldn't be any easier and more straightforward. No awkward meetings. It's all done online. Basically, in about the amount of time it would take you to listen to one of our guest pots on Sport Talk Winnipeg, you would be able to get it all done, find out the rates, and go forward. It's easy. It's all online. It takes around 15 minutes. Go to PolicyMe.com. Crank out a few questions. You'll find out whether you even need it to begin with. About a quarter of the people, they say, you know what, in your situation, you probably don't need it, but better safe than sorry. PolicyMe.com. And when they ask you how you heard about Policy Me, make sure you click on podcast. Big shout out to our friends at Royal Sports. Euro kicks off today. And Royal's always been the soccer superstore in Winnipeg. And, I know we're going to be hopefully getting outside and playing disc golf. They've got a great bike selection, expanded fitness shoes. The shoe selection there, maybe the best in the city as well. You can't really go wrong with Royal Sports, but especially if you're a soccer fan and you want to be repping Italy or England or Belgium or Germany, get on down there, get geared up for kickoff, which of course begins this afternoon. And we got to thank our friends Nick and Nikki from the Nick and Nikki DQ group, Niverville, DQ Northgate, Polo Park, and St. Anne's. Great sponsors of ours since day one, cranking out the best blizzards around. The Kit Kat Blizzard, by the way, is back. The Drumstick Blizzard is my favorite. The burgers are incredible. And if you've got maybe you're having a few people outside and it's been a little while and you want to welcome them in style, why don't you pick up a cake from the Nick and Nikki DQ group? Find out more at DQ Manitoba or hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba, and you'll be able to get an order in over social media. Big thanks to Nick and Nikki, Royal, and Policy Me for their support of the program. All right, Remis, let's get to some of Coach Paul Maurice from earlier today. And we'll go through a number of his comments, discuss them, and then Scott Billeck will join us a little later on. But a pretty interesting question right off the top. Coach Paul Maurice discussing, was asked whether he's on the same page with General Manager Kevin Cheveldayoff.
Yeah, sorry. Give me 1 sec. This press conference went pretty close to start time, and I was feverishly cutting all these. So,
there was a lot of chopping. There was definitely a lot of chopping.
I was very busy, so hold on. I got to do a couple things. Sorry to halt the show. This is
no problem.
This is a little peek behind the curtain. I don't want to screw everything up, but I guess maybe we could have waited. I could have waited, but no. Let's go on. We'll just tell them how we do things here. And I'll just pull this up. We got Paul. All right, so coach. What was this one?
This was the very first clip that you put together called Paul Maurice asked if they're on the same page as a group with the general manager.
I think we have been right from the get-go. I'll take you back to that first conversation when I came in. He said, we're going to take a look at the veterans that we have, and then we're going to strip this thing right down, and we're going to play the kids. And that's exactly what happened when you look at the ice time. We went 3 or 4 years, being about 24, 28 years old, right in the bottom 2 or 3 teams in the league terms of age. We just played the kids. And in some ways that keeps happening, right? So it's just a little bit of a different curve. You get your Logan Stanleys now kind of coming in and getting that next opportunity, and Vesseline and another first round pick. That's just his kind of introduction back into the NHL. So when there's good young players that can come in and help, then we want to have them in our lineup. In terms of playing kids 2 or 3 years till they get ready, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. We need to have those guys playing in the American League and keep going. So I don't think we're late on anybody here. I really don't think we've ever slow played a young player. Logan needed all that time and then some time in the NHL. Now I think we've got a really unusual player, a man that big that can handle the puck a little bit. So I think we're on the same page with it for sure.
coach, Paul Maurice. And you know what? Many of the line of questioning from many of the media members did revolve around some of those younger players. And, you know, as we'll hear from both the coach and the general manager, there were some unique challenges this year, one of which happened with the Manitoba Moose being on the road for like half the season and away. You know, without the team being in the same city, they needed to keep players with that club, and there were NHL rules that mandated it. So it did create, well, some situations like, you know, as we've talked about, a player like Ville Heinola going long periods of time without playing. You know, luckily, as we'll hear, I mean, he did get some time before the season began over in Finland, so still did get about 50 games in. But there were a number of questions about that. And here's another one from Maurice, who you know, talked about daily conversations with the general manager throughout this year.
This is a daily conversation that's happened every day since I've been here. I mean, we talk about where we're at, where we need to go, and discuss how we got to get there. As far as the shelf life, I would just, and I understand in my job, you're always going to have your critics, and that's a beautiful part of pro sports. It's the passion of the game. But I'm really proud of the job I did and this staff did this year under incredibly trying circumstances. Like, I'm really proud of it. We did a good job this year. Our team played hard, fought through adversity. But a bigger thing that maybe I can't sell, but I'll explain to you, that's really important. The room right now, the culture in our room right now is as good as it's been since I've been here. And I think that's priority one for your job as a coach. I think we have more players invested in Winnipeg now than we ever had. Truly, the Jets, the community, the long-termedness, and this sometimes, fellas, is a challenge, right? We always have the guys that love playing in Winnipeg, love playing for the Jets. It's small things. Mark Scheifele buying a house. It's all of those kind of connections that we need to have in Winnipeg, because maybe we're not like some other major markets that can draw players or not have us on their no trade list. All those things that we compete with. So our draw has to be our room and the culture of our room and the togetherness of these guys. And that, I say without qualification, this is as close a group as we've ever had. And the culture of our room right now is as strong as it's ever been. And the coaches are, in fact, a part of that.
All right, there's Coach Paul Maurice on the court. And, you know, I'll be honest. I mean, you know, I think most of us are here from Winnipeg or Manitoba, and we know the challenges that, you know, Maurice just alluded to with guys having Winnipeg on their no trade list or people not wanting to come here in free agency. And from an organizational perspective, it is incredibly important to be able to get guys to buy in, commit to the team long term, as well as to the city. And, you know, we've seen with a number of these long-term contracts, you know, and that's one of the things that I think Cheveldayoff has done so well. And part of the reason why I think there's so much confidence in him from upper management and ownership, because of what they've been able to do. And let's face it, ownership, I think, has been a big part of that as well. When you get the likes of Connor, Morrissey, Connor Hellebuyck, Morrissey, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Wheeler, all these guys committing long-term to Winnipeg. And, you know, certainly that's a great trend. And you do want to have that culture in a very close, tight-knit group. And you just hope that it'll manifest itself into a better team on the ice. The Jets core, a big topic going forward. Will there be changes to it? How do you feel that they performed this year? Coach Paul Maurice talked about the core players earlier today as well.
Yeah, I think the core is very close to being right. And some of that is just continuing to develop that core. The pieces around the core are probably the place that we'll try to do the most work on it, but we're strong at center. We're strong in goal. We've got some shooters on the wings that can do some things. We've got a bit of bite in our lineup, not a tremendous amount, but some. So I think the core is right. It's very, very hard to get a core that you like. And, you know, Kelly, I look at the other 8 teams, and they're probably all going to say the exact same thing. The core is right. And your core has to be right to even get to that point. And there's going to be 6, maybe 5 or 6 of the 8 that didn't get through the first round that are saying their core is right. It's a hard thing to get a group of guys like we've got together. You pay years of a price to get to that point, but it's there. it's there. And I think it'll keep getting better. And we're going to, like all of these teams, Colorado, you think, mostly that's right there on the doorstep. They're going to look around at kind of that periphery support around their core to get them over the hump.
We'll go back to Kelly Moore for a follow-up. Go ahead, Kelly.
So, Paul, if memory serves correct, some of the supporting moves you made were specific to this year and the situation we're going to be in. Will you view that differently now that you're going back to the Central Division? Will that look a little bit different in terms of that supporting cast?
Yeah, I don't know how much that part changes. First question always will be, what do we have available to us right now that can come in and contribute, not just hold water. What do we have in terms of young players that we can get to contribute? And then what are our needs and the holes that we need to fill, or the areas that we can upgrade? And then that part's actually easy, Kelly. You can sort that out very quickly. The question is, what can you do to acquire that? And what is the cost of acquiring? That's the far bigger challenge. How do you make those areas where you got to get better? How do you make those better? So that's the bigger challenge.
Many of the questions relating to, I don't want to say a transition, but an assumed move into the lineup of some of these younger players that we've been talking about for the last couple of years. Billy Hainel at the top of the list, certainly Dylan Sandberg, who played the entire season with the Moose, David Gustafson, another member of the Manitoba Moose that certainly one would assume will push for a spot on that fourth line. But there, as Maurice has said before, those positions, you have those core players, the scoring players at the top. You've got the Adam Lowry unit, which has been, a very, very good checking line that, chipped in quite a bit offensively. And then a fourth line. And Maurice has always said that the fourth line, needs to include penalty killers, guys that can contribute in some level of special teams. And that'll be a big thing for certainly Gus. And, he had some interesting comments on Christian Vesalainen as well, which we'll talk about, as well as hear from General Manager Kevin Cheveldayoff. But what I was most interested to hear about today, in addition to many of the plans going forward, is after a few days to reflect on what happened, to hear the coach talk about the playoffs, both the good and the bad, the 4-game sweep of the Edmonton Oilers, and unfortunately the sweep on the other side that bounced the Jets out of the playoffs. Here's Maurice on the series versus Montreal and Edmonton.
I usually take 3 or 4 days and you don't have a control of your brain. So you're going back for it, but try not to go too deep into it. And then you'll go back and you'll go straight through it, right? Get back and you'll watch those games and you'll go through every step of areas. And normally I don't think about it, but my phone was ringing real early this morning from Pete DeBoer, who's playing Montreal. And we spent a couple hours talking about what his team has just done and what he's going to face with Montreal. So I think more importantly, I'll go back and start from the very beginning, from the first meeting at training camp to all of it straight through. And as I've actually done that a bit over the last couple of days, I'm just reminded about how incredibly extreme it all was, right? You start looking at your schedule and first team in 40 years that ran that road schedule and did pretty well with it. You've got your 7-game stretch where you lose, how you came out of that. The Edmonton series feeling so strong and excited about it. You've got the night after the first game against Montreal going, ooh, hoping that Mark's back in your lineup sooner rather than later, trying to deal with that, hoping that Stas can come back in, how you're going to deal with DeMello's injury. So you start wobbling, and then you're always left with an incredible disappointment, just an incredibly sense of I don't even know how to describe it to you. When you put all of your time, your entire life into one thing, and it just disappears on a final buzzer. So you learn to take a few days before you really rehash it. But we'll go through that series very closely.
Go back to Sarah Oleski from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
And sticking with that idea of going back and reevaluating everything, you made a comment in one of your earlier comments today about how perhaps there were some areas in which your group overachieved this season. Can you give us an idea on where you think that may have been?
I think being able to shut the 1-2 down guys in the National Hockey League is pretty darn impressive. And you've got a scratch and claw decor, right? So what we weren't running a bunch of Norris guys against them. We were a bunch of guys that had to work and give everything on every shift. The idea of covering ice easily against Connor McDavid has never happened. The cost of that to them mentally, that they were able to play to their prime plus in that series. I think that back end, I guess I said overachieved, but I don't really like that a word because humans are capable of an awful lot. I think they reached their capacity of capability in that series, and it was awesome to watch. And then, of course, you're left in the next series, and we struggled. So, but I do think in that series, when you can do what those guys did, and yes, back to an earlier question, Connor Hellebuck is a huge part of that, Mike. I mean, that's a big part of all of it. But I really enjoyed just watching from the bench how that bench matured and cheered guys on and just supported and covered over when there was a mistake. That was a fun series from a coach's point of view. And I think that's where I got to this culture idea. And that also went into my exit meetings. That was the thing that I was left with when the players left, is these guys are all in here. And it was almost the first time I left my exit meetings where I didn't have 6 guys going, well, what about me? How come I didn't, I want to play more. What can I get? Where the meetings were the opposite, is, they love playing here. Great bunch of guys, love the room, love the game, love the year. One of my most fun years, all of those kind of things. Felt like I played my best hockey. I feel like I'm developing into my best player self. So in that part, I think we hit it out of the park.
All right, there's Paul Maurice talking a little bit about the season as well as the playoffs. And yeah, listen, I understand, wanting to get away from it for a little bit. And that's, going through that Montreal series for the coaching staff isn't going to be fun. But again, you get a few days away from it all. And, listen, they are focusing on a number of the positives, and there were a lot of positives. And, sometimes it's difficult to do that in, coming off of a defeat. It certainly is difficult for fans. I'll put my hand up on that one. I'm still sort of rankled as to how the heck that happened and where the team was that we saw beat the Oilers for the Montreal series. But, especially at the end, those things being the Winnipeg Jets, being the situation, the market that they are, what we just heard from the coach can only be encouraging going forward. Now, there was a couple other funny ones. This was maybe the funniest moment of it. Scott Billeck, who will join us a little later on, asked the coach one of the more general questions you will ever hear, but essentially it was all about the team's identity. This is how it sounded.
So what I want on any team that I've had is I want them to play like a team. So you asked me a very general question, so I understand that sounds like a cliche, but I want that bench to be together. I want them to fight together. I want them to adhere to a certain style of game that they will all understandably look slightly different in their skill set. But I want that compete, and I want that room, number one, to fight for each other. That's the culture part of it. So would like to play a very fast game if possible, and a very physical game. Those are the two pieces. You look at the playoff hockey, and you look at the difference between regular season hockey and playoff hockey, and you look at really a version of what the Islanders has done, but that's extreme too, because the Islanders' goaltending numbers, like in that series, they stopped an awful lot of pucks, right? With the exception of the last game, in which, I don't know if you guys saw that national anthem, but that was awesome. Like that was possibly the greatest thing that we missed, was that kind of emotion at home. So you've got an older, heavy, hard team. That's playoff hockey. You've got Tampa coming in, and they are really fast, but they're also quite physical with their game. And you've got the Vegas Golden Knights are a big, heavy, fast, physical team. And Montreal, I think, would be a prime example of a team that's maybe not built like that up front. They certainly are on their back end, but they would have gotten to that team identity, that playing that one style.
And, a little bit more on Well, part of the team identity, unfortunately, at times over the last few years has been to really let your goalie bail you out. And listen, hey, he's one of the best, if not the best right now. And that's been a huge part of the Winnipeg Jets' success. But the coach was asked if, the Winnipeg Jets have maybe been relying too much on Connor Hellebuyck.
Sitting here, let's take the summer off because we got Connor Hellebuyck. And in all of these great goaltenders, go back, like look at the Pittsburgh's 2 Stanley Cups, right? And you say, yeah, well, they had these amazing teams. They had Crosby, they had Malkin. Look at the games. Their goaltending, and it was 2 of them, absolutely stood on their heads, right? But that's the key piece. They've all got great, great goaltending. We, in the last 2 years, have been thin on our blue line. That's just a fact. And 2 years prior to that, when we finished, I think, 5th in goals against, we were heavily loaded on our back end, and we had Connor Hellebuyck, and we finished 5th in goals against, and we had a whole bunch of kids up front. Now it's starting to shift over. Our kids are getting a little older. Part of the cost is we lost a bunch of our back end, but we still have Connor Hellebuyck. So when those 2 things come together and we still have Connor Hellebuyck, then we will be a team that's going to be competing maybe in the final 8 like we were this year. We're a pretty good team. We've got some places that we got to get better at. Making the playoffs, winning the first round cannot possibly be viewed as a negative in Winnipeg, because then your standard's so skewed, you are never coming to the rink happy. Connor Hellebuyck's on our team. We drafted him. Whoever drafted him, well done. We developed him, and he does mask a lot of the challenges that we've had, especially in the last 2 years, for sure. And we're going to try to address that and fix it and move forward in how we play. Our forward group is maturing into a really good forward group. Our back end has to catch up to kind of our goaltending, but not everybody has all the pieces all the time. So we're in that process of building that.
That was one of the most interesting, bits we got out of Paul Maurice today. And very straightforward that, Connor Hellebuyck has really helped them kind of get through a time where the defense core just hasn't been at the level that it was a few years ago when the team was, challenging, in the conference final. But again, much of this conversation today did come back to, the young players. And, Maurice was asked about, and this gets to the taxi squad and some of the challenges of this year with the Moose and where the clubs were with being on the road and at home. But he was asked simply about, some of these young players. And I think in particularly Ville Heinola spending long stretches in the press box and not playing. Here's Maurice.
Had to have certain players here. Like, we had to have a taxi squad. You weren't not allowed. And on your taxi squad at certain points in time, and because we didn't have a road game in our province, we couldn't bring people in and out. So our taxi squad had to be a little different than other teams. We had to keep some good young players there at every time so that if we lost players, we could actually have enough players in the lineup. So we had a different dynamic with that. The message to the year-end message to Christian Vesalainen was like absolutely fantastic. The change in him, his body, his work ethic, his play from 1 year shocked me. And he earns all of it, right? Like, he came back a completely different young man. Hart came in and had a good year last year, and he's going to have to fight for a job next year. That's his lot in life right now but he's not taken this year Matty Perreault's job, because Matty Perreault's working net front on a power play that was running 3rd and 4th in the National Hockey League. Like, I'm not taking that guy out. The other 2 guys are killing penalties, and Harks hasn't gotten to that point yet. Ville Heinola probably has a better sense in some ways of where he's at than anybody else, because he went back home last year to play in Liga instead of playing in the American League, because he needed the time to do that, to let his body grow into it. He's got good, young, small defenseman, and he doesn't have to get bigger. I don't think he has to get a whole lot smarter. He just has to get faster. And then he's got to come in and earn a job on the left side, which is the challenge here right now when you've got Stanley and Sandberg and Heinola, and you've got Morrissey. So we're stacked there. Ville on his offside would have been a really, really big disservice to him, right? It would have been a real challenge for him, especially first few games in the National Hockey League. So he's just got to, he's going to get faster. I don't really need him to get a whole. He's got to get stronger and all that. I'm not telling him to get bigger so he can hit. He's not going to play a physical game. He's going to play a speed game and a puck movement game. But he's like all good young small defensemen. He's going to take a little bit of time before he's pulling it across on the power play and everybody says how great he is. But he's a good player. Like, those guys are good players. They're not the tipping point right now for the Winnipeg Jets. That's all.
All right, there's Maurice on Hainla and some of the young players. Hey, interesting, frank comments from the coach. And I mean, there is all, we see first round picks and we imagine what they will be as stars in the National Hockey League. And, patience maybe for fans has never been, the greatest virtue of them. From the club standpoint, they've been more than patient. And, in the case of a guy like Logan Stanley, it seems to have really paid off. I'm certainly hoping that's the same for Ville Heinola. And the coach is pretty clear as to what he thinks Ville needs to do to be an impact player next year and be a regular in the Winnipeg Jet defense corps. Here's a little bit more from Maurice on some of the young players in the organization.
So I want to separate like the two, Ville on the blue line, and the question more of Thompson, Lewis ahead of, I'm gathering, Harkins and Vesalainen. Is that where we are with that overtime? You've muted yourself now. Now we're on to something.
That was Gregory. He doesn't like my mutterings.
Oh no, you're good. Is that kind of part of the question?
Exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. You might throw Gustafson's name into that mix, but the exact right concept. That's what
So I've got all three of those guys have a ways to go before I'm putting either of them to kill penalties against the Edmonton Oilers power play, which was number 1 in the league, or taking Matty Pro's job on the power play. They're not even close to that. 1 or 2 of them may get a chance to do that over time. I do think, Vesalainen may have shown us that he could actually, at some point, come into our lineup in a 3-hole with Lowry. That's a possibility because of his acumen on the ice. But none of those young players are close in terms of effectiveness in the game than those 3 veteran players. Not even close. And they might get there, and that's what the American League is going to do. And we might be able to say, okay, we've got the 2 right guys that we're going to bring in to play with one of these young guys, and they'll take off. Or they'll get a little better, and you'll put 2 younger guys in. But our fourth line this year truly had a big impact on all of the things that I am positive about our group. I don't know that they're coming back. That'll all be up to, they're all UFAs. I get that. But having 3 kids on your fourth line playing 8 minutes a night makes no sense to me, unless you can take one of them and play them up in the top 6 at some point if somebody gets injured, if they're that point. They need to play and play big minutes.
All right, so this coach talking about some of the younger players. And listen, some of that stuff is probably not what many fans want to hear. At times, we hear so much from Coach Paul Maurice, and he is the master. Like, there's nobody that communicates better, that can sort of, position his line of thinking. And listen, the guy's got so much experience, and he has garnered a whole bunch of respect. People will disagree with maybe some of the things that he said, but that is the way that he obviously feels, and that's the way that he's coached. And that's the job that he has been given by the Winnipeg Jets. And I don't think anyone, myself included, is ever going to agree all the time. At the end, it's about the results. And, we'll see how this works going forward as to, are these young players ready to move into the lineup? Are they ready to contribute? How much they benefited from this year? And at the end of the day, whether they're ready to take somebody else's job. And in the coach's mind, that was not the case this year. We'll see whether that will be the case going forward. Now, we do have some more from the coach, but I do want to get to a little bit of Kevin Cheveldayoff before we bring Scott Billeck in to sort of get his thoughts on everything we've heard today and talk a little bit more about going into the offseason. And speaking of the offseason, not surprising, the priorities for the general manager going into the offseason was one of the first things that Kevin Cheveldayoff was asked about today.
Like any offseason, obviously you take some time to decompress a little bit, reevaluate, go over just the past season, dissect it a little bit. So certainly we'll take some time and do that. That obviously that process has begun. Then, as a manager, there's certain, summer functions that do come into play here. We're getting ready for the draft. We're getting ready for the expansion draft, and then obviously getting ready for, free agency. So there's lots of work behind the scenes in those regards. But obviously it's evaluating, where things are at and what you have in your, stable of players moving forward, and what directions that and actions that you need to take for the future.
Cheveldayoff on the off season. I mean, I don't think anyone was expecting definitive statements on what they're going to do. Not really the style, but pretty clear where the organization feels that they need to make some improvements to get to where they want to be. Now, listen, at the end, there's evaluation of the players, and there's certainly evaluation of the coaching staff as well. And Kevin Cheveldayoff was asked about how he thought the coaching staff handled this season and the job that Paul Maurice and his assistants did.
Well, I think that, again, it's first and foremost, you have to look at, I guess, how prepared we were coming into the season. I think you'd have to look back and see, what the coaching staff did to, get a game plan to approach this unprecedented time. We obviously are in the world of COVID. I think that, as a team, we had, I think it was 160 some straight days where, we had a swab, shoved up our nose to, make sure that we were COVID, tested and COVID, COVID free. Those are the psychological things that the coaches, I think, have to have a game plan for. And for that, I think they were exemplary, and I think they were outstanding. So then you look at, the body of work. I think that, the year itself, the games, I think I touched on it a little bit, finding a way to not go back-to-back losses for such a long period of time. I think that really gave us a real chance to stay in that fight and end up, being that team that could have finished anywhere from second to fourth. We touched on first for a little while there, but again, realistically, it could have finished anywhere in that regard. So I thought, again, the body of work during the season, you look at our goals for, you look at our goals against, our goals for are slightly up, from the year prior. Our goals against are slightly down, from the year prior. You look at the power play, the penalty kill power play, ran in the top third, for most of the year. I think we finished, seventh or sixth or seventh or something like that. You look at the penalty kill, which I think was a point that we talked about last year, in this year-end kind of conference, video conference or whatever it was. Our penalty kill improved, year over year. So, when you start to dissect all those things, then, there's certainly areas that we did improve. Obviously, the game plan that went into, to beating Edmonton was something that, again, players definitely need to take credit in buying into how they played, and coaches, have a great opportunity to take credit for, devising a plan that everyone bought into. Now, when you're not sitting here with the silver trophy beside you, everyone is certainly critical in the end, and probably no people more critical than the coaches themselves. And I know that they're going to soul search to see how they're going to continue to get better as a group. But overall, I thought they represented the Winnipeg Jets and gave them the best opportunity that we had to try and win. So I thought they did a good job.
All right, there's Cheveldayoff on the coaching staff. And I mean, listen, he, I don't think anyone's expecting him to say, some of the season was good, but man, that was ugly the way it finished. Or, the last month of the season was pretty stressful for all of us. They focused on it. I think Cheveldayoff does a pretty good job of laying out the case of what the team did positively this year. I think just sometimes it's tough to hear all those things when you come out of a series that ended the way it did against the Montreal Canadiens. But it's true. They did do a lot of things well, and many of the things that you attribute to coaching, like special teams, were quite good this year. But from a general manager's perspective, there's very few things that can make or break your tenure, your job, the way you're viewed by the public, and a massive blockbuster trade is one of those things. And listen, the swing that Kevin Cheveldayoff took with the Patrick Laine, Pierre-Luc Dubois trade is a deal we will be talking about on this show and at bar tops in this city for years, decades probably in Winnipeg, as to what it meant. And listen, it did not go well for Pierre-Luc Dubois here in Winnipeg overall, and it was pretty much the same thing for Patrick Laine in Columbus, unfortunately. And Cheveldayoff was asked about Pierre-Luc Dubois, the season he had, and his outlook for the young player going forward as a Winnipeg Jet.
So, again, I had an opportunity to sit down with Pierre-Luc here in the exit meetings, probably really the first chance that I've had to, to sit down with him, that I was, I guess, really allowed to sit down with him as a, within the rules of COVID and stuff like that. So we had a good opportunity to talk about the year, talk about his year, and certainly I think it was a challenging one for him. I think he'll be the first to tell you that he can be better and will be better, and I firmly believe that having him here from the start of training camp next year will produce a different result. And he's a talented young player that went through a really tough time and a tough year. And I think if you look back at players' careers, they're going to have up years and down years. And for him, I think this is going to be a learning moment, and will help him become a better player and person and professional. Like when you struggle at different points in time, I think it helps you to reassess and reevaluate and then reassert yourself. So I got nothing but full confidence that that's how it's going to play out for Pierre-Luc.
High hopes for Pierre-Luc Dubois going into next season for the Winnipeg Jets. And listen, that is going to be one of the most important things for the club. I mean, you do wonder how things might be different if he had performed differently, especially in that series against Montreal when Mark Scheifele was unavailable due to suspension for games 2, 3, and 4. But, it didn't go then, but it certainly wasn't just Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, I think the forward group as a whole looked pretty discombobulated after Scheifele left with all the new combinations, and just it never got going against a Montreal team that was absolutely relentless on them. Now, the Scheifele suspension has been a huge topic, not just here in Winnipeg, but around the National Hockey League. And maybe the most interesting and unexpected side story to the entire Stanley Cup playoffs has been the heel turn Mark Scheifele's taken in markets outside of Winnipeg. It's obvious that this organization supports their star number one center 100%. And Kevin Cheveldayoff was asked about it. And you kind of get into the detail of how closely they looked at this, trying to stand up for their center and support Mark Scheifele. Here's Cheveldayoff on the entire incident and suspension.
Well, certainly first and foremost, I think I want to say I'm grateful that Jake is starting to skate again and is recovering, and we were very, very I don't know what the right word is, thankful, I guess, that we had heard right after the game had ended that he didn't have to go to the hospital, and that he was while stretchered off the ice, he was up and moving around and in the dressing room, and was functioning normally and everything like that. So for that, we're really, really grateful, because you never want to see a player get injured, and communicated that to Mark Bergevin, as well. So, but from the play itself, I did have a unique perspective, because I did sit in on the hearing, and I did, look at a lot of different things and a lot of different, areas of it. I looked long and hard at the standard of charging and what escalated it to a suspension type of penalty. And I think, and I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to spend the time to look at the videos that the NHL produces, not so much the suspension hearings themselves, although you can look at those too, because they do have some commonality when players have been suspended for charging. But looking at the definition itself, and they talked about the escalation of a charging penalty to a suspension is when a player leaves his feet, launches himself into the opponent. Certainly distance traveled is certainly something that's talked about, but in this case here, my firm belief is that both players actually traveled the same distance. They one was skating to go pick up the puck and come around the net and make a play. One was skating on a back check. If you look purely on distance traveled, every time that you would forecheck on a player, technically then you're charging if you go and hit a player technically. So there's a lot of technicalities that come into play. I think that if you look at player and puck tracking, and you listen to Mark Scheifele's explanation of what was going through his mind, at that time. Mark Scheifele at the top of the circles decreased his speed by 20%, coming in because he was looking to see whether, the player was going to spin and go back, to the other post or come around the post. So he was making himself available, to go at either side. And then if you continue on, and they talk about it in the suspension video itself with Mark, the player is allowed to be hit. Now, again, the level of force and stuff like that, is hard to judge. If you look at the play itself, I think that it's 0.8 seconds from the time that the player picks up the puck behind the net to the point of impact. 0.8 seconds in a game that a player has to make a decision. If you further look at the video, and the contention that the puck was already in net, it's 0.2 seconds that the puck crosses the line to the point of impact. And then further, if you look at the point of impact, the player's head, clearly is not the first point of contact. It's the shoulder into the body. And certainly did it potentially ride up and have some head contact, I guess possibly, but like it says in the suspension video, that happens in course of impact all the time. But so that's basically I guess my interpretation and my analysis of what transpired.
There you have it, General Manager Kevin Cheveldayoff on Mark Scheifele's suspension. And tell you what, I mean, does a pretty good job of breaking down and making the case. Hearing that, knowing he was in it, I still can't wrap my head around the fact that Mark Scheifele got 4 games, considering what else has been let go with fines or not even hearings. But that's something that everyone around here will still be bitter about for a long time. No one more than number 55, who's not going to be in the opening night lineup next year because he is yet to serve his full term after the Jets went out in 4. We've got Scott Billeck coming up. We're going to get his reaction and talk about what we heard today and a little bit more going into the offseason. Before we do that, I want to thank Not AutoCorp for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk since day one. Why not get into the vehicle of your dreams at an incredible price with the help of the Not team? They're down at Waverly and McGillivray. Tons and tons of amazing vehicles, including a great selection of Teslas on the lot. And they do so much more than that, too. Detailing, bodywork, Red Seal technicians in the shop. Whatever your automotive needs, Not AutoCorp can take care of them for you. And if you're in a vehicle that you're looking to get out of, they'll help you move on out of that too with their very successful consignment program. Hit them up, Not AutoCorp, Waverly and McGillivray, or online at not.ca, and tell them the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. And lots of other things going on with our friends over at Little Brown Jug. Of course, the home delivery is continuing. And you know what might be perfect for Dad coming up for Father's Day is one of the Little Brown Jug Father's Day baskets. A great basket to help Dad kick off the summer. It includes the Good Times Variety Pack, which of course has the new summer lager, as well as the Hefeweizen, both incredible new beers from Little Brown Jug. It's got the Little Brown Jug Red Camping Mug, 2 koozies, a Never Better Special Blend coffee, Joe Beef barbecue sauce, the Meat Company Sweet and Spicy Barbecue Beef Jerky, and an Angel's Share Hop and Hives cocktail mix, which turns our Belgian IPA into a delicious radler. We'll also be at the various farmers market events throughout the summer. Visit the events page on the website for more info. And at that website, littlebrownjug.ca, it's easier than ever before to order your beer online, including the Father's Day pack, and get it delivered right to you. Hit them up at littlebrownjug.ca. And a shout out to Breezy Bend. Lots of people were liking that breezy lid I was wearing yesterday, as do I. Cannot wait to get on the golf course. We've got the rules loosening, so at least we can be with some friends on the golf course beginning tomorrow. That is going to be a lot of fun. And of course, next week is US Open week. We'll have a lot of golf coverage here on Winnipeg Sports Talk before tee-off at Torrey Pines coming up on Thursday. Can't tell you, Chesson Hadley right now is leading the Palmetto at Congaree. Dustin Johnson in second at 8 under par, 3 shots back. Doc Redmond, Harris English, Ches Reavy Eric Van Rooyen, all within 5 shots of Hadley, up at the top of the leaderboard. Find out more about breezybend.ca, about Breezy at breezybend.ca, or give them a call about the waiting list for next year's golf season. All right, let's welcome in Scott Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun to discuss more on the Winnipeg Jets end of season. Scotty, great to have you back on the program. We haven't spoken the last few days. Listen, just before we get to what we heard today from Kevin Cheveldayoff and Coach Paul Maurice, we heard from the players on Wednesday. I'm still personally, and I'm probably more emotionally invested than most members of the media. I will admit that. I'm still not over the Montreal series. I mean, right. I still can't wrap my head around, just exactly how it went so bad so fast after how good the team looked in those situations against Edmonton. I know there was a ton of credit, deservedly so, for Montreal. We haven't had, what did you make of the Jets' performance in round number 1 against Montreal? What can we learn about that going into a very important offseason for the club?
Well, I think it illuminated, some of their deficiencies. They don't have a puck-moving defenseman that they can get out of their zone, right? I mean, that was one of the biggest problems that they had. I think it shone a light on a little bit on, some of the, they need to have a better strategy for getting through the neutral zone when there's a trap. I mean, you're not going to see that all the time. Montreal played that very well. I mean, we're looking at a team that's, kind of played a 1995 New Jersey Devils style in that series and did it well. But at the same time, you also just need some other players to step up. I mean, there just wasn't enough of the top end talent remaining because, Mark Scheifele was obviously out for the series and Paul Stastny only played, the final 2 games of it. But, we didn't see enough from Pierre-Luc Dubois. We didn't see enough from Kyle Connor. Even Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, and I don't even, I struggled to blame Nikolai Ehlers. There was times where he was trying to take on 3 or 4 defensemen just to gain the zone, the offensive zone. And, so I'm not, he's the guy that was doing that, but there just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough size, that thing too. There wasn't enough, strength to get to the front of the net to make it hard for Carey Price to see a shot. I mean, that guy saw pretty much everything in this series, and the other stuff that he didn't, the second chance opportunities were swatted away by Montreal defensemen before the Jets could get a stick on them, mostly because the Jets weren't even in position to do anything. So, it just, I think to me, it showed there's still quite a ways to go for this Jets team. They can talk about, yes, they have a core, they have all that stuff, but if you don't have that defensive part of your game down, you're not getting through, the second round. You might get through the first round. They did. They also got very, very, very good goaltending from Connor Hellebuyck in that first round. In the second round, he was still very good. I just don't. I
thought he was better in the second round, to be honest with you. I mean, I hear this. Let me just hit on this because I've had a lot of people say, "Well, listen, the only difference in the 2 series was that." They were like the Edmonton series, and we all agree was very, very close, razor thin margins, and they won 4-0, but that wasn't really a sweep. And people say, well, it was just the same thing. It wasn't the same thing. That was a very close series. The Montreal series was not close in any aspect of the game. And listen, if Connor Hellebuyck wasn't as great as he was, it would have been even uglier than it was. I mean, you had a couple close scores, 1-0 in game 2. 3-2 in overtime in game 4. Can anyone tell me that those were close games? I mean, they weren't, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the team that really had a very specific set game plan for Edmonton, and they were able to carry it out. When it came to Montreal, the game plan wasn't there. To try and outgrind Montreal wasn't the right game plan, if that's what it was, because Montreal came in and outground the Jets, into oblivion, essentially. I mean, you saw it, that their fourth line, Montreal's fourth line, was dominant against the Jets, right? Whether it was Scheifele's, well, not Scheifele's line, but whether it was the top line or whether it was Nate Thompson's line, it was still, it was a struggle throughout the series. I think there was a game plan there. They didn't open the taps enough, but even if they could open the taps, then you had the 2-on-1s coming the other way. The power play, the special teams weren't there for the Jets. Going -3 on the power play or whatever it ended up being. I think the Jets ended up scoring one in game 4. I can't remember now, but It wasn't good enough. I mean, you can't allow 3 shorthanded goals. I get one is late and it's kind of floated into the net. I believe it was Joel Armia who got that one. But even then, you can't allow those other 2 in very important moments of the series. And then there was just the same sort of things we see from this team. There just wasn't enough oomph out of the gate. And even when there was, they would get scored on. So they didn't score a lot first. I know Blake Wheeler talked about this quite a bit. After they just couldn't get that first goal, they didn't have a lead at all during the series. I mean, that's tough to win hockey games when you're always chasing the game, and especially chasing a suffocating team like the Montreal Canadiens were. It's very tough because they were so good at really just killing the Jets off and sucking the life out of them. And then obviously Carey Price, I mean, took whatever kind of hope that was remaining in the sales out of it because he was just so good in the series.
Got Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Before we dive into some of the particular topics, just overall, what did you think overall of just the mood, the content of what we heard from both the coach and the general manager today?
Yeah, I thought Cheveldayoff's press conference was probably just, kind of par for the course of what you normally see. Not really telling us much of what's going to happen, what they're, that sort of thing. Paul Maurice is a little more honest about it. It's not what fans want to hear. When you talk about Ville Heinola and guys like that, I thought it was interesting that Paul Maurice talked about, Heinola not being the tipping point. Some of these guys, David Gustafson, the guys that, that wouldn't really play the roles that they want them to play, kind of being the tipping point. I don't know. I'm stuck on a fence on this year. I wrote my column the other day, and some people think I ripped on the team, and fair enough. I did a little bit, and but it's a tough one. If you look at the larger picture of this, it's been 2.5 years since the Jets kind of fell from grace, right? It hasn't rebounded from Byfuglien kind of leaving the team, retiring. It hasn't rebounded from losing Ben Sherratt, Tyler Myers, those guys. I struggle to wonder why it hasn't gotten there yet. I know Kevin Cheveldayoff said it's not an overnight fix. Fair enough. It is very difficult to do that. But have we seen enough? Kevin Cheveldayoff said, or Paul Maurice said, I guess they both sort of did, talked about, they need to find people to play with Josh Morrissey or with Neil Pionk and that sort of thing. So why haven't those things, come together yet? We've had arguably 2 of Josh's worst seasons now back to back as a player. And that's largely in part to, I think, who he's been playing with. I mean, when we saw him playing with Dylan DeMello, very good, right? I mean, even with Neil Pionk, very good, but you want to have Pionk and Morrissey separated in these instances so you can have a stronger unit. But is the unit stronger when they are separated but playing with, lesser kind of talent next to them? I think the Jets have never really been the same since Morrissey and Trouba kind of, defensively, since Morrissey and Trouba kind of went away. And obviously Dustin Byfuglien, right? But so, yeah, I thought that was interesting. I didn't take much out of Kevin Cheveldayoff's conference. It was a lot of just talking points. That we always
and again, what's he going to say? I mean, he's like, we're going and making a big push at this guy or something. I mean, I think they were pretty clear. They want to improve the defense. We know that. They seem to be very happy with their core. There doesn't seem to be a big hangover, not questioning of the core or anything because of the way things happen against the Montreal Canadiens. And certainly, I think that there's obviously some, listen, I wasn't sure what we'd hear from Maurice today and Cheveldayoff in just that, the way things ended when you combine with the way the regular season ended. We sort of had this blip, like this wonderful, incredible week where everything came together. Paul Maurice had a plan. They followed it. They looked good. And all of that was sort of erased. But then comes the Montreal series. And I think a lot of people are, kind of, wondering, is this, which team is it? And again, like I said earlier this week on the show, if you look at the regular season, in a lot of ways, there's incredible parallels to the regular season to the playoffs. I mean, I thought the Jets came out, had a good start to the year. They won a lot of those close games that could have gone either way. And they got to 27-14 and essentially had clinched a playoff spot. with 6-8 weeks left in the season. And then you had that miserable final month of the year, which couldn't have gone much worse. I mean, first time we've seen a 7-game losing streak in Winnipeg in 10 years, losing 9 out of 10. And to their credit, they got it back when they needed to in the first round of the playoffs. But much like the regular season, you had that great start, which was the 4-game sweep of Edmonton, and then an unexpected and somewhat incredible crash landing in that second round, Scott.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm going back to kind of one of you talked a little bit, now I kind of brain farted on it, but it's, I don't know. I wonder what the identity of this team is. And I think I asked Paul Maurice, and he didn't answer what it is. He kind of answered what he wants it to be. He wants it to be fast and physical. Well, this team can be fast. I'm not so sure about physical, but if that's the case, so here's the thing. I mean, if that's what your team needs, because I don't think the Jets really had much of an identity this year, and I think that was part of their problem, right? You're kind of trying to adjust your game to the other team, and obviously that's part of the game plan. I get that, but the Jets didn't really play to their strengths at all, because I'm not really sure what their strengths really were, other than Connor Hellebuck in the net, right? And so, I mean, they have this offensive core, this nice spine down the center of top, kind of top-notch centers, but some of them weren't playing to their abilities. Pierre Dubois will be one of them. And so it just wasn't there this year. And so I'm very interested to know what, and I wasn't able to be on the call, or at least ask a question to Kevin Cheveldayoff because I was dealing with COVID stuff, but I want to know what the identity they wanted this identity to be. So if Paul Maurice has the same sort of idea, fast and powerful, fine. But then go out in this offseason and make it so, right? Get those pieces, supplement the roster that you have now, because it can be fast. Kyle Connor, great straight line speed. Nikolai Ehlers, of course, blazing kind of speed, right? If that's what you want it to be, then go out and get those players to supplement what you already have. If you want to be physical, well, that's going to start, I think, on the back end too, because that's where you're missing some of that physicality.
Yeah, I think all of it seems to look at the blue line, Scott. I mean,
well, I think so.
When you talk about the speed, I mean, you named it. I mean, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, they've got it up front, and even on that third line. I mean, Adam Lowry's not the fastest guy, but Andrew Kopp certainly can fly. Mason Appleton can fly, and that's a physical element,
line, right?
That he really wanted in I would say that the forwards, based on what Maurice said, that's pretty close to where they are, if they're playing the way that they can. The blue line, though, is an entirely different story, and we saw it exposed in a big way against Montreal. And to me, that is the priority. Now, the question about the blue line, and it was interesting hearing Maurice talk about it specifically with these younger players. I think we all expect Ville Heinola to be on the team and playing next year. But, he said himself, like everybody, they've got to go, earn a job. And, there's a number of players on that left side, particularly young players, including Logan Stanley. Let me ask you this. And again, it's very difficult, but this is what we do. We speculate, we look into the future. From Cheveldayoff's perspective, I mean, are we looking at free agency to try to fill a hole or two like they did last year on some shorter term deals and give the opportunity to those young guys to show that they belong? Or is the need for a premium top pairing defenseman so great for the Winnipeg Jets that Kevin Cheveldayoff might be willing to part with some premium assets or potentially a player from the core to get that guy here to play big minutes for Maurice on the Jet blue line?
Yeah, and I guess it depends on what Cheveldayoff wants to do. I mean, that's obviously what we're talking about. But it's is he willing to give away a Heinola or a Samberg? Likely, it's got to be one of those two, right? Because I mean, unless you're trading, if you're going out to a team, depending who it is, a lot of these teams aren't trading their top 4 defensemen, right? So you really got to target a certain guy, and then you have to make a good offer. And a good offer isn't just going to be Niku and whoever else, right? It's going to be one of these top prospects, and likely even a roster player if that's what you want. I think they have to evaluate, can Heinola come in? Can Samberg come in? Can those guys come into and all three of them? I mean, Paul Maurice said, it's unlikely that all three of them can come into line. Well, that is partly true because, they're all left-handed guys. And the problem is you want Samberg, you want Stanley, you want, all these guys. And we'll see what happens with the expansion draft. If, do they protect Stanley? What happens to DeMello? Is Appleton gone? Whatever, right? But it is on defense, right? I mean, there are, and Paul Maurice said it himself. He admitted it today that their defense is the issue, right? And it needs to catch up. And he kind of clarified that that's not what he didn't mean, catch up to Hellebuck or whatever, but it needs to be better. So yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of the crunch time. We've said this before, though. I mean, there was crunch time last offseason too. I think if they would have got that top four guy, then you can probably start playing a certain different game. Stop limiting your forwards because you have to get them to play such a defensive style of game. So yeah, I think it's either you really go hard in on a Heinola, on a Samberg, whoever it might be. But I think the problem that you have right now is that all those guys want left-handed spots. You're probably thinking that Logan Stanley's secured himself a spot for next season. Where is Ville Heinola going to play? Is he going to play with Neil Pionk? It depends, right? I mean, that's ideally probably where you want him. You want him in the top four. You want him playing those minutes. So is that where he's going to play? I'm not so sure Paul Maurice left the door open completely, though, for Heinola to be in the lineup next season. I mean, you go back and read one of his quotes. I mean, like you said when you're asking me, it is partly he has to earn a spot. And, I didn't hear that about Logan Stanley or that sort of thing. I think Logan Stanley's kind of earned his spot if he's here, obviously. If Dylan DeMello plays with Josh Morrissey next year, we saw how great that pairing can be in the first round, right? So is that the thing? But I don't know. I think this team is at some point has to show they need to make that big move to acquire that big player to do it. It's great if you could do it all in draft and develop and do all that kind of stuff, and all those guys came in. It's great for your cap and all that stuff. But I wonder, I've never seen a team just do it solely on draft and developing. At some point, you have to make that move to make your team better, and that might mean breaking up your core, whatever it might be, to try and achieve that. And I don't know what that looks like. Does it mean trading Kyle Connor? Does it mean trading Nikolai Ehlers? I don't think Ehlers is on the table anymore. Not like he was maybe last summer. Kyle Connor might be. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. But he has such a good contract for a guy who's probably going to score 40 goals.
A ton of goals.
And so how do you replace that? Right. So how do you replace that? So it's like, granted, this is all very difficult, right? It's easy for us in the media to say, oh, just do this and do this and do this. And I think we become victims of that sometimes because it's like, well, just go out and do something, right? It's not that easy to do. Like, granted, that it isn't easy to do that. But this is Cheveldayoff's job, right? He has to find a way to build a winner in this city.
Well, and here's the thing. And here's the thing just on that, because, we're talking about it, like they've realized the organizational need for defense and they have addressed it through the draft.
Right.
First rounder on Ville Heinola, second rounder on Dylan Samberg. And, as I believe was Sandy that just mentioned in the chat, I mean, anyone that watched the Moose this year sees a 6'5" monster in Kovacevic on that blue line that I think thinks that there might be a potential for him too. But to your point, very difficult to come in and move all those guys in when everyone wants to see them and thinks that they're ready at the NHL level. And at the same time, if you go and spend significant assets to, get a guy that's automatic top pairing, top four every single game out on the lineup card, it then does prevent a barrier for these guys to come in. And in some ways, it's a very difficult catch-22 between making sure you're icing your best lineup, giving yourself the best chance to win every night. But at the same time, these guys can't get experience if they don't play. And, it's a fine line. And I understand why it can be so contentious with fans. And it's probably sometimes, going back and forth between the coach and general manager as to what is the best, path going forward for the club, short-term, long-term, as opposed to the coach's main job, and that's to ice the lineup that gives him the best chance to win and get 2 points.
Yeah, and here's the thing. If you've gone all in on these drafting, right, you talked about it, if you've gone all in and you've decided, hey, we're going to build a defense through what we've done in the draft. So now we have Samberg, Heinola, Kovacevic, Declan Chisholm's another name. There's a bunch of guys, right? If that's your plan, then you got to start playing them too, right? Like, how long can there's such a fine line here, and you mentioned that, but there's a fine line too about like what's the window right now? Is the window the next couple years? Because once you hit that 3rd year mark, now you're starting to worry about Mark Scheifele's contract, Connor Hellebuck's contract, right? So you have those guys still under contract now for another 3 years, I believe it is, after this year. So is it these next 2 years where you have to really go for it and figure it out? And what does that look like? I mean, the one thing about having assets, it's good that you have them for your team, but sometimes they can be used, obviously, as trade pieces to get what you need. And we see other teams do this. I mean, Toronto Maple Leafs were going to trade their top prospect. He was on the board. I think he was number 5 on TSN's trade bait board at one point during the trade deadline, because they're trying to win now. And so what are the Jets doing? Are they trying to win now? Is it all about cost certainty and team control over the next X amount of years? What is it? I mean,
well, I don't think it was an all-in push this year to win the Stanley Cup.
No,
and needless to say, it didn't happen, and I don't think that would have been a smart thing to do. I mean, I'll give Cheveldayoff credit. I mean, he has swung for the fences, as we like to say, on a few occasions. First, it was Paul Stastny, which worked out incredibly for the team. The next year, it was Kevin Hayes, which didn't work out incredibly for the team. Bottom line is, you cannot be doing that every single year after year, or you get into a situation like the Pittsburgh Penguins where you're kicking the can down the road, and at some point you have to pay the piper. But as far as your question goes about this window, I mean, I really think that they feel that they're going into another window, which to me is 3 years. And it's pretty simple.
Right.
Connor Hellebuck signed for 3 years. Mark Scheifele signed for 3 years. Blake Wheeler signed for 3 years, and he's, obviously linked to that core going forward. I mean, you do have Ehlers for another 4 years. So that is the window right now. But to your point, I think that if they did make an aggressive move, if you saw significant change on that blue line, I think the Jets have the forwards to compete most nights with most clubs. But again, if they're spending all their time on their own end, if they're chasing, just trying to get the puck on their stick, like we saw in the Habs series, it complicates it. And it makes it very, very difficult. And more often than not, you end up leaning a lot more on your goaltender to bail you out, to keep you in hockey games. And it puts that much more pressure on your scorers to make the most of the chances that they get, because as we've seen, it can be somewhat lopsided when you have those issues in your own end, and especially have a problem getting the puck out of your own end and onto the sticks of your offensive players to let them do what they can do best.
Yep, I agree. I mean, that's at the end of the day, this is going to come down to defense. I think you can find forwards to supplement your roster all the time through free agency and stuff like that. When we saw some shrewd moves by Montreal to get guys like Eric Stahl, to get guys like Corey Perry. I mean, what a pickup for Montreal to get a guy like that. But those guys are available. I mean, you just have to get them here, and that's not always the easiest thing. But again, you can deal with your forwards. You also have guys coming up like Cole Perfetti, and there's other guys in the system that you could, David Gustafsson, Christian Vesalainen, who are going to grow into roles over time as well. But yeah, like you said, I mean, you have a top 9 right now. It depends what happens with Paul Stastny. Does he re-sign? That sort of thing. But again, yeah, it does. Like you said, comes down to defense. You got to get that better. Got to let Connor Hellebuck have a little less, rubber on him. But you got to also let your forwards do what they can do. Because that's the one thing that we saw in the 2017-18 run, is that the forwards didn't have to play as much defense because they had a pretty good defense. I mean, I know everybody ragged on Sherrod and Myers and that sort of thing, but a lot of those people now would love to have those guys back, I think, because there was something to those players playing together, right? I mean, obviously you had Buff too, and Enstrom as well. And so all that stuff, is important. But again, it just goes to show how important it is to have a solid defensive structure.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that is. That is the absolute number one priority for the hockey club going into next year, to change a bit of the look. And again, part of that, I think the best case scenario for the team is that sort of happens naturally from within as part of the draft and develop program. But listen, I absolutely see your point in that, and this would be Paul Maurice's point as well. Listen, these are talented young guys, but do we just give them spots, or do we see if they're ready and see if they're better than the other guys we have. And as far as the free agents goes, and maybe this is the perfect storm for the Winnipeg Jets. We know that this is going to be a very difficult summer for free agents. We know that the cap is flat. There's a number of players. And to your point, the Corey Perrys of the world that were just looking for somewhere to play, even on a very, very cheap deal, to go in short-term, help a team win. And the Jets did that very well with Derek Forbort. Listen, I know people were all over Forbort at times in the playoffs and in the second half of the season, but considering what they paid, what the risk was to get him there.
When he helped them so good at the beginning of the year.
Absolutely.
Right?
Huge win for the club. So, maybe it's that sort of a player, and maybe it's a more expensive player. And we saw Tyson Barrie take a 1-year prove-it deal in Edmonton, and we saw how that worked out for him. I don't think there's any doubt that if you're a free agent defenseman, you might not be thinking long-term, but I think the potential of playing with a pretty talented Winnipeg team and the opportunity to step in and play a very significant role for someone that's trying to parlay that into a bigger contract would be there. But again, you'll be able to get a certain level of player, on the free agent market. You won't be able to get that franchise cornerstone for the most part. I mean, I guess
unless
anything's
you can land
possible.
Dougie Hamilton. Yeah.
Well, I was about to say, what's that going to cost? How many other teams are going to be in? What's the how realistic is that happen? And listen, I'm just going on previous history.
Yeah.
The Jets can be as aggressive as they want. It usually doesn't work out when we're talking about big primetime free agents in Winnipeg's favor. And that's why, you're not only looking to trade for somebody, but you're looking to trade for someone that either has a long-term contract without trade barriers, or someone that hasn't even gotten to that point yet and is under team control, and you can work on signing long-term like you've done with some others. I mean, it's not easy to be done, but that player that we're talking about, that everyone dreams about, probably not just available by signing them on the open market if you're the general manager of the Winnipeg Jets in most cases.
Yeah, I mean, the guys, I'm looking at the list right now. I mean, you could go after Jamie Alexiak again. I know the Jets ran on him at the trade deadline there. It didn't materialize, obviously. But yeah, it's not a huge list of top names. I mean, David Savard, you could think of again, and then kind of
Savard's a big guy that would be a great fit here. And again, I don't know what he's looking for and how long of a contract and what the market will be for Savard.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in a normal time, I think he would absolutely be in demand as a guy that could play top 4 minutes, big, strong. I mean, many of the things we talked about the Montreal defense, David Savard brings to the table, and he's going to have an opportunity to show what he can do potentially all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals if they can get past the New York Islanders. But that would be the type of player, maybe not very flashy, but big, powerful, reliable defensively, can move the puck if need be. I mean, it would be a great complement to either a Morrissey or a Pionk if you're talking about those spots. So that is the sort of player. And, hey, if they can do it, and maybe you do have to overpay a little bit, you can actually do that if you've got a couple other defensemen on your blue line playing on entry-level contracts. That is the one thing that they do have the flexibility, and not to mention the other guys coming off the books. Let me ask you this, though, Scott. Let's transition from the blue line, because I know we'll probably spend, the entire summer speaking about the blue line. For forwards, we spoke about the potential of, maybe moving one of those core pieces for a big, that would have a big hole in the lineup. What are your thoughts on the year that Cole Perfetti had? I don't think for a second it was ever in the plans that he might be an NHLer a year after being drafted. Yeah. But when you think about the year that he had, the way he showed himself in the American Hockey League in particular, never mind the chance to get out and play at the World Championships, I think he's really changed his position in the organization as to maybe being a realistic option for next year. And then there's the other side of things with the fact that if he's not on the Jets, he's got to go back to the Ontario Hockey League, which I think by any standard would be a step back from where he was playing this year. Does Cole Perfetti's season change anything as far as what may be available to do up front? And if I had to ask you, who's more likely in the opening day lineup for the Jets next year, Cole Perfetti or Paul Stastny? Who's most likely?
Yeah, I think it's Paul Stastny. I mean, it depends, right? The problem is all this stuff is married to the defense, right? So depending what you do on defense, right? But here, let's just take that out of it.
Hey, just quickly before you go, there's some people in chat. Perfetti has to go back to the OHL if he plays next year. Frosty. It's not that he can't. It's that's the only he can't go to the American Hockey League next year because of the CHL deal, and that's a big deal for NHL teams. And there have been some guys that ended up playing maybe not very much in their 19-year-old year just because they didn't think there'd be a big benefit of having him back. And who knows, maybe playing and practicing with the guys and being in the press box at times would be something. It is too bad he couldn't go back for more AHL time. Anyways, I just wanted to hit that before people got the wrong idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't go back. I don't think Cole Perfetti is going to play next year for the Jets, and the reason is this: they're probably going to go into training camp with the idea, and here, let's go through this full training camp. Let's get PLD on the track that we want him on. We want him playing center. So you got Scheifele, him, Scheifele, PLD, Lowry. You don't want Cole Perfetti playing on the fourth line, right? That's not where you want him. You don't envision him there. That's not where he is ever going to play. So, and Paul Maurice talked about that this morning. We don't want guys in positions that they're not going to play. That's part of the reason why they don't want Heinola playing third line minutes. They don't want him playing 8 minutes a night, right? Or third pairing minutes, sorry. They don't want him playing 8 minutes a night. There's no benefit they feel to it. So we have to factor in that too. How does the coaching staff historically done this stuff? Well, if you want to look at the other center before it was Cole Perfetti, the big name guy, it's Mark Scheifele. How many times did Mark Scheifele look like he was ready to probably play a little bit, but they sent him back, right?
Yeah, but it was only like he had the amazing preseason as a 18-year-old, and then got a few games in, and then it was quite obvious that he went through. He never had a few months in the American Hockey League, and that's the one difference. That's why it was just such a unique opportunity for Perfetti because of the way things were this year that he got that chance. And as I said, we're seeing younger players contribute, and some teams are more
open to it,
seem to bring these young guys in sooner than others. And listen, it's hard to argue with the way the Jets have developed their talent. I guess I'm just thinking that with this scenario, I don't think the Jets are too keen on having Cole Perfetti go back to the OHL, but they might think that's preferable than having him being in and out of a lineup or playing in a spot that doesn't really project as to where he'll be as an NHLer. And I mean, as long as nothing changes, and I don't think there's any talks that it possibly could, that is going to be a tough decision for the Winnipeg Jets. And, sometimes we've seen some young guys, even this year, I don't think they'd ever want to get into a Ville Heinola situation, where he's the Bernie Sanders, Sanders pick, spending all that time out. But again, do you want a guy going back, completely dominating a league that he's better than, doesn't really belong in? What does that do for his development? At the end of the day, though, if guy's in the lineup, it's going to be because he's ready and he can help the team win hockey games.
Yeah, and Cole Perfetti be in camp next year. I assume he'll be in camp. He might even get games, in the regular season, that sort of thing, to see what happens. But I don't think there's going to be room for him next year, and I think that's part of the problem. Now, you can also say, well, where's the room going to come in the next, several years if they sign PLD long term? Well, we'll figure that, you cross that bridge when it gets there. I don't think Cole Perfetti is going to be going to play the wing. I think, if you think Perfetti is that guy, then you probably start transitioning PLD back to the wing where he played in junior instead of playing center. So maybe that's the thing too. I think that's an organizational decision that they're going to have to make, depending on but next year is PLD's kind of prove it year, right? I mean, so you had a bad year. There's a lot of excuses for that. I don't say excuses as a disrespectful thing. There was a lot of, just things that happened this year that were completely out of his control and that he had to go through. And so I have empathy for that 100%. But I think next year he has to show it before the Jets are going to invest in him. And that sort of thing. And so I think Cole Perfetti is just going to have to go back. I mean, that's just the reality of it. He was presented with an opportunity this year that never would have been there if not for COVID, right? And so I don't think Cole Perfetti can say, I'm going to be upset that I'm going back to the OHL. He knew that was probably going to happen anyways, right? Yes, he showed very well in the AHL. Does that always transition right away? No. I mean, we can look at Sami Niku as that AHL Defenseman of the Year. Didn't turn out to be the NHL Defenseman of the Year. So, I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think they're going to rush a guy like Perfetti because of the spine that they have now. They don't really need to. And if you throw Paul Stastny into that mix again, I think that's another year. You're probably only signing Stastny to another 1 year or something like that, right? So I don't think that there's just going to be the room. I know that's not what fans want to hear.
Well, that's
I
sort
get
of
it,
why I
but
asked the question, because I really do see that, if for whatever
I
reason,
think they
it's
want
not
Stastny.
guaranteed that Paul Stastny, might not have a better offer, wants, a better place for his family, and he might not be in the mix. And then if that's the case, you have some tough decisions to make cap-wise. Where are you going to be spending that money? And listen, if you were confident that Perfetti was ready to play and could be in a role in the top 9, whether it be center, whether it be on the wing, it certainly does free up a pretty nice paycheck to give to someone that can help your blue line. But
for sure,
all of that, it's going to be fascinating. I mean, we're going to be getting into expansion draft talk soon. Then, of course, the draft, and then free agency, which will be fascinating for the Winnipeg Jets. Scotty, before we go, of course, you've been doing double duty for the last 18 months between the Jets and COVID. Let me ask you this, because you'd be as much of an expert on this as anyone. Give me a date that I can expect to be able to go into Boston Pizza, sit at the bar, even if it's by myself, and order a beer indoors, or even if that's not the case, get out on patios. Like, how optimistic can we be right now?
Yeah, July 1st. I think if it's just by yourself. I mean, if you're going in there and drinking alone, right? Then I think July 1st is that date. I think those numbers, the 75%.
Like, you think it'll still be households? Like when they get open, it'll still be to the
you're
one
asking
household?
me to. I don't.
Tough to say.
One. It's so hard to say, right? I don't want to promise something or say something that, because even public health can't say it, right? But here's the thing: 70%, 25% is achievable. That will happen by July 1st. I did some of the math last night. You can check my tweets on it. My concern, and I'm not a math expert by any means, but my concern is first getting these first dose targets by it's August long and Labor Day. Those are the ones that I'm more concerned about, because first doses are leveling off here, right? Like we're not booking a ton of first dose appointments anymore. There's a lot underway to try and get people, coerce people, whatever you want to call it. Coerce is a terrible word. But to get people to get that, to convince people that this is the right thing to do. It's going to happen a little slower though for that. And I think so that's just temper. I don't want to say temper expectations. I don't want to ruin people's summers. I think we will be able to, on July 1st, that's their plan, Canada Day. I think you'll be able to go to a bar and indoor. It's probably going to be difficult to get in. People are going to want to go and do that. Maybe July 2nd is better day. But by July 1st, I think we're going to be able to at least do some of those things, especially patios, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Like the restaurants and bars open like but that, as far as being outdoor dining.
Yeah. And just like September 6th, Labor Day, that sort of stuff. I mean, that's going to depend on our vaccine uptake. I do think there is hope for that. I do think that we will get to 75% second dose, because we're already we're tracking towards that 75% first dose. I think most people that get a first dose are automatically wanting that second dose, right? Because the people who go and get the first dose want to be fully vaccinated. You want your vaccine card. You want to be able to travel. You want to be able to not have to self-isolate if you're close contact. There's a lot of perks to being fully vaccinated. And I think people just in general want to be fully vaccinated to protect one another. And we're seeing that. So I think
people just want to win the big money.
Well, even that too, right? I mean, there's all that stuff, right? I mean, but I think it's just that first dose getting up to 80%, that's going to be the hurdle. Whether that changes now, these things might change, right? These numbers, these targets, whatever, they might change too over time. We don't know. And that's really it. Like, I'm trying to, there's hope. I think people just need to know that there is hope here. That's the hardest part right now, because we're still got these restrictions.
Got the plan,
and,
get the shot, and then August long weekend. August 5th is supposed to be CFL kickoff, and that could be 50% in the stadium, and potentially the whole place open up.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
I mean, as many as we can pack in there.
And if you've watched the hockey playoffs, you watch NBA. I mean, even if you watched the NFL last year, you kind of saw these stadiums that had at least some people in it. I mean, if for sports fans, this is a sports show. If you want to be in the stands at the CFL game, I sound like a government official right now. I'm not. But, if you want to be in there, I mean, get your shot. I mean, that's really it. I mean, it's
pretty simple.
Yeah, it's that's it. You want to be in the stands. I think that these things will become more and more accessible especially for the CFL season and even more so for the next Jets season. More fully vaccinated. We've seen it in the playoffs. Watch the Vegas Colorado series. You saw tons of fans, both cities. It's incredible to watch, and it makes you miss it so bloody much because that atmosphere is just something else. I mean, I sit in the press box, but you get to see it around you, and it's cool to see people happy, and I think we all just miss that. So.
No doubt about it. Hey,
rant.
GoPro Trucker Manitoba, thank you very much for the super chat. Everyone have a good weekend. Stay safe. That's what we're talking about. We do get a little loosening and can maybe meet outside with a friend or two and have a beer on the weekend. That should be great. And I did see Eric pop in that hoping to have a beer with all of you at some point soon. I promise that when we are able to do so, we'll get together at one of the BP lounges. We'll have the WST gang join us live, get to meet some people. And Scott, I will have plenty of schooners for you, waiting for you, because of not only how much we enjoy having you on the program, but the great work you've been doing on both beats throughout the past 18 months. Have a good weekend, dude, and let's do this again soon.
Yeah, you as well, man. Appreciate it, and everybody kind of stay safe this weekend.
Right on. There's Scott Billeck, Winnipeg Sun. Great conversation coming off Paul Maurice and Kevin Cheveldayoff's availabilities earlier today. Do want to get to some odds for tonight and the weekend for Coolbet, but do want to thank, I was just mentioning Boston Pizza. That is the dream. We are etching closer to having all our favorite restaurants and sports bars get opened up and actually being able to cheers each other. In the meantime, though, you can still get the delicious taste of Boston Pizza, the game day meal, the pizza flights, and so much more. Full menu available online at bostonpizza.com. You can order for takeout or delivery online or simply by calling your local restaurant. And as I said, very soon we'll get the patios open. Hopefully we can get those BP lounges open. And maybe by the time the Bombers and the CFL kick off, we can do a little watch party at some point. Dare to dream right now. Let's just get through this next little while. But big thanks to Boston Pizza for their support. Another thing I'm very much looking forward to doing this summer is getting out to Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, a world-class fly-in fishing experience right here in the province of Manitoba. We know how difficult travel is this year. Well, you can get the trip of a lifetime and be on the water within 2 hours of the city of Winnipeg. The Terren family does such an amazing job hosting people. Cannot wait to get back. Find out more about Aikens Lake online at aikenslake.com. Usually, these next couple months completely booked with American tourists, obviously. Some openings this year because of the border situation, so take advantage of it. Check it out and tell them the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. And of course, our good friends at Assiniboia Downs. We cannot wait for Monday for some more live racing. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Remo and I with our ongoing duel at the Downs. He's got a significant lead on me right now, which I do intend to close the gap going forward. But in the meantime, you can bet on racing around the world and all the live racing in Assiniboia Downs at hpibet.com. And you can watch the races there as well. We'll get to the picks for Monday coming up on Monday's show, of course, and every day here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. All right, we do have to get to some Coolbet lines for the weekend, but let's get Michael Remis back in here after talking with Scott. Reem, an interesting day, and I don't think there was anything earth-shattering that we really heard from the coach and general manager. I think I'm with Scott. There's only so much that we maybe were expecting to hear from Kevin Cheveldayoff. And, listen, they're a group that keeps their cards to the vest. I don't think anyone was expecting him to run down. Well, these guys have made the team for next year. We've got these holes we're going to pick. This is going to be free agency. We're going to make a trade to get this guy. Obviously, that wasn't happening. But I thought the Maurice, and listen, Maurice is the master in front of a microphone. There's nobody that does those availabilities better. There were some laughs in it. There was some truth to it. And I think there was some, especially when talking about his philosophy and the situation they have with those young players, I think he was pretty honest. And I appreciated that. Some fans maybe won't agree or maybe won't like it. But he certainly didn't duck many of the questions as it pertains to the young players, where they were this season, and how they fit in going forward.
Yeah, he answered all the questions. I thought it was entertaining. I guess the one thing they acknowledged is, look, we did this. On the whole, it was a successful season. They wouldn't really acknowledge the finish in Montreal. They kind of sputtered out, but I think they recognize that, look, their defense needs improvement. They need some puck movers back there. Now we'll see if they actually do anything. The offseason typically, Huss, has been, sign, a fourth line veteran like Nate Thompson, Mark Letestu, Matt Hendricks. Let's sign, some depth D, and we'll see, how it goes. Are they going to do that again? Are they going to sign Paul Stastny? Chevy did actually touch on Matthew Perreault, who wasn't available. I feel like he's kind of walked out on that stuff before and hasn't done the end of season availability. He said don't look into it, but I don't know. Is going to come back at $4 million a year? I mean, the Jets. I don't think the Jets.
No, that's. Yeah. I mean, listen, Perreault's going to be looking to keep playing in the National Hockey League, and he'll be one of those veterans on the back nine of their career that gets squeezed by the market. And listen, Perreault's been a big part of this team for a while. He's played in a number of different spots. And I'll be honest, I thought he had a great year. I mean, as far as for what I was expecting for Matthew Perreault coming into this season, I thought that when he was on the fourth line, he played very well. When they needed him to move up, he would fit in with the Lowry line. If Kopp was, moving up into the top six, and even at times, moving up into the top six and having a role on the power play. So, I don't think that they'll be like Matthew Perreault. Would they be pleased to have him back at a reasonable number? I'm sure they would be open to that. But I think the key is the number as well as the spot that he'll be playing and how that goes forward. I mean, is he a fourth liner and he gets paid accordingly? Could that work? Yeah, it probably could. But again, it goes back to the conversations we had about some of those other younger players. And Remis, one of the guys that Maurice in particular gushed about, and there was a lot of talk about the defense, but it was interesting to hear how high he was on Christian Vesalainen in the year that Ves had this year. And certainly if you listen to Paul Maurice and his comments there, it's hard to take away anything other than Vesalainen not only has a good chance to be in the lineup, but could be playing a far more significant role than he did this year when he got into the lineup sparingly.
Yeah, I agree. He definitely talked about Christian Vesalainen. There's a lot of talk about him. Is he a bust? Is he not? I have no idea. He barely played. And when he did play, it was unlimited minutes and not really in an offensive role. I think near the end of the year, he showed up. You saw his shot at times. So I have no idea what to think of him because he really didn't play a lot. And one thing Maurice mentioned was about Ville Heinola. He's like, well, we couldn't play him on his offside. And, next year on the left side, we're pretty jammed up. We have Stanley. We have, Morrissey. We have Sandberg, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you have so many guys, go make a trade. Go bring someone who can play. Will they make a trade? I mean, how long can you say, okay, we're saving for the future. We're not going to activate his ELC because we want to go for the future. I mean, as you said, you got Mark Scheifele 3 more years at a pretty good salary. You have Connor Hellebuyck, who's the best goalie in the league, or, top 3, you can argue, whatever, top 2. Reigning Vezina Trophy for 3 more years at pretty reasonable salary. You got to go for it. You got, Connor, Ehlers, Wheeler's, while he may, salary may be more than his production, he's still a very solid contributor to this team. So let's see them make some moves, make a splash. I mean, if you have to overpay for a guy, do it in a trade or a free agency. I think they are closer than you think. They do need some puck moving D, but I think their forwards are good. Although, maybe we're totally wrong because 2 years in a row, Scheifele goes down and the whole thing falls apart.
Well, that is, again, they weren't going to touch on that at all today. But, when we heard from Maurice saying, you need to take a few days and then they're going to get into the series against Montreal and really get into it. And, when you go back and watch those games, knowing the situation the team was in and what was expected of other players to step up and, just the lack of production, maybe that changes the thoughts on a player or two or the makeup of it. I doubt it, though. I mean, I think they really did seem like, they were focusing on a lot of the strides that they made this year as a team. And I'm very hopeful for going forward. And to your point, though, I mean, it's easy for us to say, go overpay for a guy or make a massive trade and bring this guy in. I mean, you can't do anything that, stifles your team long-term for real short-term game. We've seen many of those trade deadline deals blow up in the face. But I think the point is noted that, the time to contend. And not to mention, going back to the Central Division next year is not going to be any picnic. I mean, these are some very, very good teams. And we're going to have a pissed off Avalanche team after getting bounced by Vegas that probably feels that they have some unfinished business with a very, very stacked roster. So the offseason is going to be fascinating. I mean, first off, it'll be the expansion draft, the draft. We'll get into free agency. And at that point, I think there are some expectations that, it might not be tons of moves, but one or two key moves that maybe significantly at least changes the look on the back end. And what that might mean for the forward group, I guess we'll see going forward. Remo, I want to get to the Coolbet lines, and we're going to touch on the Euro as well. And I know the tournament started today. With this being sort of the end of Jets season, we were going to focus on the local hockey team throughout this week. But I do promise you, getting into next week, of course, there's the Board of Governors meetings for the Canadian Football League. We will have the latest on the CFL, and we will do some soccer content throughout this tournament, as I think so many people are going to be tuned in to Euro 2020 as really the biggest worldwide sporting event that's taken place since the pandemic began. But we'll start off with the National Hockey League, because the Final Four is set. And by the way, a little tease. If you want to hear us really get into these numbers, thoughts on the series, games, and more, check out the Lock Shop tonight. It will go live at 9 p.m. Winnipeg time. Check my Twitter at Hustlerama. We'll probably put it out through Dustin Nielsen's Twitter account. But if you're listening on the podcast and you haven't already, just type in the Lock Shop in your podcast feed, and you can get that going forward. So we have 2 games set for coming up Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We begin with the Islanders and Lightning. The Islanders now plus 155 on the money line. Tampa Bay minus 182. The Habs Golden Knights game is interesting. I actually took the Habs in the dog pound on the Lock Shop. I think there might be a bit of listen, I think Vegas is winning this series, but I wouldn't be surprised if, there might be a little bit of a letdown for Vegas after that thrilling 6-game series against the Colorado Avalanche. So if the Habs are going to get one on the road, I think it might be game number 1. It opened at plus 185. It's now plus 221. Interesting to follow that line as we get closer to the game on the 14th. But right now, plus 221, Vegas minus 270. And I can tell you the series prices, just a massive favorite of the Vegas Golden Knights, minus 455. If you think the Habs can keep rolling on this miracle run, plus 345 more, just about 3.5 times your money if you like the Habs to shock the world and win the series. As far as the Lightning and Islanders go, the series is at plus 215 for the Islanders, so a little bit of a bigger underdog. Cash a ticket at plus 195 for their series against the Bruins, and Tampa Bay is minus 263 for the series. So I think it's probably good value, to be honest, on Tampa in game number 1 at minus 182, although I certainly am pulling for the New York Islanders to win that series. And of course, as I mentioned, Euro 2020 is open. They're underway. Turkey and Italy in the first half right now. Tomorrow, essentially, if you're big into the soccer, plan your schedule accordingly. 8 a.m., 11 a.m., and 2 p.m. for the next few weeks. A match, 3 matches per day. Tomorrow it's Wales, Switzerland the favorite. Denmark, Finland, Denmark a big fave, and Belgium and Russia. Looking forward to that game. Belgium minus 112 to win. I think that's what I'm on for tomorrow's matchup getting into Euros. So we'll put the lines, coolbet.com. If you do want to take advantage of the bonus code, 100% on your first deposit up to 200, check the link at Winnipeg Sports Talk's Twitter, Sports Talk WPG, or just simply use the promo code WST. Remo, I love your Belgium pick. I think that's who I'm going for the tournament. I love that Kevin De Bruyne. There's not a lot of Belgian fans. It's not really a bandwagon team. I think that's that might be the official team for WST going into the tournament, unless you've got another suggestion.
Yeah, I knew what I was doing when I picked Belgium, Huss. They were the team that I used in Red Card Soccer 2002 or 2003 on PlayStation 2. They had this guy, Mapenza. He was like their superstar. So I have no idea anything about soccer. I haven't really followed it, but if it's going to be on all the time, maybe I'll tune in. It's between that and I'm really into the horse racing now, and of course Major League Baseball.
Of course. Well, the good thing
on.
is you can spend the day watching Euro and then the evening on HPI Bet getting your horse racing wagers for. And we'll make a point of getting a soccer guy or two coming on over the next couple weeks to maybe educate us a little bit more about what's going on. Now, Remo, I have seen it is Friday afternoon, and I have seen that there is plenty of interest in potentially a week-ending marble race. What are the technical capabilities right now of the command center? Are we worried about the computer, whether we can actually do that? I mean, no, it wasn't planned. This would be sort of an impromptu thing at the end of the program. But I do think I could reach into the tickle trunk for an ice cream cake from the Nick and Nikki DQ group if we wanted to fire up a week-ending marbles race with the people that are with us in the chat.
I can try. Last time we tried, it didn't work. It would be nice to end the stream with that. Let me see if I can fire it. My computer's been acting funny. You're coming in very delayed for me, so we will see if you can't make it any worse. But I'll fire it up here. People are in. We can see if we can get who's in. I can just start typing in all these.
If we can do it, I'll just start firing some names to you if you want. If you want to do that.
It's loading here. Give me a sec here. I'll just type them all in. Everyone's in. Yeah, I think that would be a fun way on a Friday.
Yeah, if you haven't commented, just throw a comment in.
Uh-oh.
Hook it up. Going.
It may have kind of taken
stream.
It kind of is taking a dump here.
Yeah, no, I
got a lot of videos.
See,
and stuff.
we had a little bit
here
of
we are.
Little bit of a pause. We
really
do seem like we're back though. Everyone is excited. So, folks, we're gonna give it a crack. No, we're back here. A little bit of a pause on the YouTube stream, if you will. Hopefully, you can hear us okay. And obviously, this won't be as important for the podcast people. But while you're here, everyone, if you haven't already, please hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Hit the red subscribe button. For those of you that are listening to us on podcast, check out the YouTube as well and throw us a sub there. You can watch us do our thing. And with that, sometimes will come the very exciting marble races at the end of the program when we have something to give away. And we just felt like this would be a fun thing. Comment, we didn't quite break the internet, but it could possibly be. We are back right now. All right, Remis is good. Okay, do you want me to start giving you names?
Just let me clear everyone. Can I add names? Okay, just list them off as quick as you can here.
Yep, you got it. Okay, I'm just gonna go up to the top. Let's go. The Bullet, T. Conapoli, Wrench Doozer, T. Will.
Okay, wait. Let me try this again. Hold on. I got to get into a different thing so I can do it. Actually, type them in quick.
You got it.
Hold on.
For some reason,
Gitch
Lishka just shouted out former Jet great Zane Kalemba in the in the chat. No idea what the Zane Kalemba reference was to.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Someone was asking, what's the most obscure Jets jersey? And this is my favorite Jets jersey someone could get. And I was like, well, are you talking about this year or all time? And I would say all time, my favorite one would be, I would get Brett McLean because the Jets picked him up like right before the first game. He played in the first game and really never played that much. Or James Wright would be one of mine too.
Well, I mean, I'm down. If you want to talk about obscure, I don't how could it be more obscure than Zane Kalemba? I mean, Zane Kalemba
emergency backup goalie. Emergency goalie. I forgot that. I think we had him on the radio.
Well, we did. We did.
I'm ready to.
It was great. Okay, you ready to go?
I'm ready to put all the names in. Yeah. Okay, just give me. I'm just gonna look at the chat too.
Yep, perfect. Tracy Okraniak, Rob Pepper, BA Split, Tristan Rivers, John D, The Bullet, T. Will, Eric H.
Yeah.
Troy Stevens. Jeff Kabilis.
Yeah.
T. Konapali.
Yeah.
Dom
Quicker,
Zappia.
Chris, go quick.
T. Will. Brown Eyed Girl. Mike K.
Yeah.
Darcy Cullen.
Yeah.
Gitch.
Yeah.
John D.
Yeah.
Frosty.
Yeah.
Dallas Pauls.
Yeah.
Comet. Rob Mahoney. We got T. Will. We got Wrench Doozer. Jay Jones is in. I miss anybody? No. Mitch, of course. The Godfather. Brown Eyed Girl. Taylor. Darcy Cullen. Comet. Candace Jane. Anyone else that we've missed? Michael Smith. He's fired up for a Kit Kat Blizzard. Kitty Pup. B. Henderson. Jesse Nabs. Agent Q. Renee Dano. John H. Mike Wynn. What up, Win Dog? Roger Q. BW. I think we got Wrench Doozer in already. I think. But if not, throw him. Yeah, just VW. BW, excuse me. B, like Brian Winters or something. BW.
Okay.
And I think that's just about it. Larry Eloy. We didn't get him in. Art Cooper. Did we get John H? Jesse Nabs. I think we pretty much have everyone. Michael Capty.
Yeah.
And there we are. I think we've got everyone.
I got Justin Fung in. I think I got Justin Fung in there.
Justin?
And put him in
Archer's Coolda. Oh, no, not Archer's Coolda.
Archer's. Am I putting in Archer's curled? Oh, someone said Bogdan Kiselevich as an obscure Jets player. And I remember when they picked him up at the trade deadline. I don't think he played. I do remember my friend was trying to rent his condo. And I think Bogdan Kiselevich inquired about it. And he messaged me. He's like, do you know a Bogdan Kiselevich? I'm like, yeah, why? He's like, the Jets trade. He's like, he's asking me about my condo. And I was like, all right, man.
All right. Did we get Leslie? Leslie in? Leslie and Kevin Girton, Henry D. And then I think we're ready.
I got Kevin. Leslie,
Henry, Kevin.
And
then
D.
we are ready to go. All right.
Kevin's in.
For a famous Nick and Nicky DQ ice cream cake from one of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQ locations. If you win, you're going to need to hit us up. We can't message through YouTube, so either send us a tweet or an email, and we'll get you set up. Nick has been so nice. And by the way, even if you don't win, think about an ice cream cake for the weekend. Maybe you're going to have a little fun outdoors with some neighbors or something. Be the baller of the block with a DQ ice cream cake. All right, Remis, you can cue us up and let ready to go. This is how we finish the week.
I didn't put me or you in. I totally forgot. Oh, this one sucks.
Okay.
This race sucks. Let me get to a different one. Hold on.
Okay. Yep.
I picked a bad race. It was just like a circle track. It was a bad track. My computer
is racing. Comet's ready to go. Yeah, and we're hoping that this works. By the way, there is a precursor. We have had some issues. A little slower right now. Got to figure out a way that I can do this on my computer maybe, and that might be an easier way to do it going forward. But we're going to give it our best shot.
You can do that and share your screen, yeah. Okay, let me take this one. This one's called Taking Flight. This is what this map is called.
Taking Flight. All right, nice little Jets theme as we finish up the season for the year. We are taking flight into the summer on Winnipeg Sports Talk. I hope you'll continue to join us daily here at 1 o'clock, live on YouTube and on the podcast. All right, we've got everybody in that we mentioned. This is going to be wild. All right, we are underway for today's Winnipeg Sports Talk week-ending marble race. Looks like Rob Mahoney, or did everyone just fall out?
Oh, sorry.
Everyone got DQ'd. Oh, no, there we are. Oh, yeah. Keep those up. So the leader right now, it looks like it is Rob Mahoney, although it's tough. We've split them out into both sides. Everyone's following it.
Top right has the leaderboard.
Excellent. Yeah, top right. People were wondering where their marbles went. This is a great one. This is awesome. Man,
what's going on in this one?
You are to get all of these. It's sort of like a maze. We have to see who makes it out first. Oh, it looks like we're getting our first marbles that are coming down. The bullet right near the top of it. Tracy's in there as well. And now everyone's meeting in the middle. The entire Winnipeg Sports Talk chat in going down this. So this is take flight. So now I imagine we're going down the runway. And the bullet's still right there at the top, along with, I believe, Trevor. I'm not sure what happens at the end. Either this is the end or it might go somewhere else. But we've got a very, very Eric.
Oh my God.
And the bullet. Huge jump onto the next one. Bullet, they are still there. Candace Jane and Leslie Mitchnuck, Eric H, all in the mix right up at the front. Candace and Leslie, the ladies are, and there's Tracy Ukrainiak too. Ladies doing quite well. Now
she just went see
this is somebody went over the top rope. Leslie's still in there. Jesse Nabs.
Trace.
Here comes Frosty. Is Frosty still in or Frosty getting thrown over the top rope? Frosty's still in, along with John D. This is coming right down. We are down to the end. Could it be? I think Frosty is our winner. Woo!
Frosty takes it.
Look at this. Everyone in, just beating out the bullet. Gitch came in at 4th. Roger Quinnell at 5th. Eric H, Mike, John D, and Taylor. Wow, what an epic marble race to finish the week. Frosty, nice work. Hit us up on Twitter at Sports Talk Winnipeg, or hit me a Remis. Or if you don't have Twitter, do it on Instagram. If you don't have Instagram, I guess we could do on email, but probably prefer on social. A lot easier, and we'll have your contact. We can hook you up with Nick and Nikki. Frosty, well done. That was a pretty wild race, Reem. Very close throughout the entire.
That was a cool track.
No, it's
very cool track. Yeah, Frosty the Bullet. Let's see.
Loved it. There it is.
Someone asked if
they.
Here. Someone who didn't make it. Tracy was the only person who got a DNF. She went.
And Tracy was right there at the end. She was right there at the end, I think, too.
Yeah.
I think she got thrown over the top rope right at the end. And so intense.
So
that was a blast. Everyone love it. Quite the mosh pit. Darcy, I think I got DQ'd. Michael Smith, do a full hour of marble races. At some point, we might. We've got this channel now. I mean, obviously, during this time, we're here to talk sports and do everything, but don't put it past us to do a stream of ridiculousness, screwing around at some point, video games, whatnot. It might be the Winnipeg not sports stream. Right now, we'll stick to Winnipeg Sports Talk stream, but we will looking forward to it. Remo, we should get out, though, because Kenny and Rennie are going to fire up. I think they're doing another sort of wrap-up show after Maurice and Chevy spoke today. So anyone that's in on YouTube, if you want to fire it out over there, Tracy, fix. Hey, you won. We didn't purposely put you over the top. And yeah, Remo and I weren't in there. John D came 3rd. John H came 97th. The ups and downs of the Johns. But anyways, go check out Kenny and Rennie. Have a great weekend. Do want to thank PolicyMe.com. Don't forget, when you're heading to PolicyMe.com, very simple. Go through the questions. They'll give you the information. You won't have to talk to a human being. It's all done online. But make sure you put in, when they asked how you heard about PolicyMe, put in podcast. It's a big, big help to us going forward. Royal Sports, Nick and Nikki DQ, Not AutoCorp, Little Brown Jug, BreezyBend.com. And, of course, Boston Pizza, Aikens Lake, Assiniboia Downs, and Coolbet.com. I'm going to throw out the Coolbet lines if you want to use that bonus code for getting on the Euro. Go watch a little more of this Italy-Turkey game and get ready to jump on the air with the guys in Calgary on 960 in about an hour. If you want to check that out, we won't be talking a ton of Jet stuff, but I know the Scheifele heel turn is still a big story in other markets, and I know they'll be asking me about that. So 4 p.m. Winnipeg time till 7 if you want to check it out with the guys on Sportsnet 960. Other than that, though, folks, thank you so much for being with us, especially the people here now. We had massive shows throughout the playoffs with a lot of newcomers, but it's great to see so many of our regulars that are with us, supporting us each and every day. We hope to have some news on merch next week, launching an online store so people can, online get things directly to them, as well as working on some things that will probably work through Royal Sports. But the bottom line is we appreciate your support so much. We appreciate the support of the sponsors, and we're having so much fun doing this with you. And we are not going anywhere. Monday, we get the vote on the Canadian Football League season. Let's get that done and get ready to get back in and watch the Winnipeg Blue Bombers run it back a year late after winning that Grey Cup in 2019. Thanks to Scott Billeck. Huge thanks to Michael Remis, who just did a great job today getting all those clips of Maurice and Chevy ready for us. And I know Remo will have a good week, couple days off, and should be a great show on Monday. Brandon Rewicki, Jim Toth, Kevin O, they're all going to join us next week for a little more end-of-season Jets talk, but we'll be hitting the Euro, Bomber, CFL news, hopefully get Naylor on early in the week for the latest on all of that. So we are just getting going, everybody. Have an awesome weekend. Go check out Kenny and Rennie, and have a great one. We'll see you on Monday on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a good one, everyone.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.